The UK is doomed.
The UK just became the first Western country where you have to scan your face just to use certain websites.
You are going to disagree with what I'm about to say, and if you disagree with me, you can unfollow me right now because I think you're barbaric.
If you've committed a crime and you want to confess, click yes. Otherwise, click no. You have chosen no, meaning you've committed a crime but don't want to confess. A paddy wagon is now speeding to your home.
Never seen before in the UK, and with the Home Office separately planning to create a new police unit to monitor social media posts, there's no doubt free speech online is under assault. This census charter has no place in a democracy and needs to be urgently re-examined. The world is watching.
No joke. The UK now leads the West in building a two-tier internet, and your face is literally the passport. As of July 2025, the UK's Online Safety Act is now in force, and according to Ofcom and The Guardian, platforms like Reddit, X and Blue Sky now require you to either scan your face with AI, upload a government ID, or confirm via bank or email match. It's the law. Some smaller sites literally couldn't afford it. They're outright locking the UK users out of their site. Some Discord users found a way to beat the face scan using a PlayStation game. Literally, they use the photo mode in Death Stranding, which lets you pose and zoom in on the game's main character. They took a screenshot of the character's face, uploaded that to the age verification tool, and it passed. That means that an AI for a video game avatar was a real adult human. This isn't just adult sites. AI age estimation is rolling out for alcohol sales too, and it's being debated for forums and even potentially news and social platforms. Proton VPN says it saw a 1400% surge in UK sign-ups after the law kicked in. So is this really about protecting people from sensitive content, or is this about giving private companies the power to scan your face and verify your identity, because it sets the tone for state-backed censorship, even if the so-called intention is safety? Because once this system is in place, what else can they block you from viewing? Now you know.
Genuinely. But here's the massive problem, because that's not where it ends. And it pains me to say this, but it affects left and right, because buried inside this safety law is something far more dangerous. Let me read this to you directly from the legislation. Platforms must take action to prevent content relating to illegal immigration and people smuggling. Now just pause. Think about that for a second. If you post a video exposing abuse of the asylum system, or show what's happening in coastal towns, or just talk about rapid demographic change, your content can now be flagged as harmful. That can now be considered misinformation, not because it's false, not because it's violent, but because it goes against a government-approved narrative. This isn't guesswork. Ofcom, a state regulator, now has the power to fine platforms £18 million or even press criminal charges against tech execs who don't enforce it. So what will platforms do? Exactly what you think. Shadow bans, takedowns, suppression.
Right. I'm almost 83 years of age, and I've got something to say about this bloody Online Safety Act that Keir Starmer and his lot have pushed through Parliament. Spent my 20s watching those poor souls on black and white TV news reports about East Germany getting crushed under the Stasi's boot. Secret police, surveillance, neighbors reporting on neighbors. Sound familiar? I was there in '89 watching on the telly in colour too, as those brave Germans tore down that wall with their bare hands and a hammer. Tears in my eyes, thinking, finally, freedom's won. But did it really? Here we are, 35 years later, and what's Starmer doing? He's building his own digital wall, isn't he? Online safety, they call it. Same lies the Stasi told. It's for your protection, citizen. They want to monitor every message, every post, every bloody thought you share online. Age verification that'll track who you are everywhere you go. Powers to remove content they don't fancy. My father's generation fought and died so you could speak freely. We all celebrated when totalitarian surveillance fell.
If you oppose the Online Safety Act, you are on the side of predators. That is what a UK government MP tweeted last night. And I swear to God, this might be the most deranged, manipulative bullshit that I've seen this government spew out yet. Calling your own citizens predators just because they dare to criticise your shiny new surveillance Trojan horse, that is not governance. That's like a toddler throwing a tantrum whilst they're holding the nuclear codes. It is straight up regime language. You don't support our law? Well, then you must be evil. You question us? Well, clearly you want to see children harmed. According to this guy, that makes me a paedophile sympathiser now because I don't want to scan my face every time I want to look at Wikipedia. It is a cheap, cynical move. Wrap a bad law in, but think of the children, and anyone who disagrees can be branded a monster. Classic authoritarian playbook. But the reality is that the people pushing back on this act aren't predators. They're parents, they're tech experts, and they're privacy advocates. They're just ordinary citizens who understand what this law actually is, a massive fucking power grab dressed up as safety. This law gives the state and unaccountable third parties access to your data, your face, your emails, and your private encrypted messages. And because the government knows that, their response isn't to address the criticism, it's to smear anyone raising the alarm. Because if they admitted that the act threatens free speech, privacy, and basic civil rights, the whole thing falls apart. So instead, they weaponize shame. If you disagree, you're with the predators. And the dangerous part is, once a government starts branding anyone who disagrees as the problem, the whole thing falls apart. Today it might be support the Online Safety Act or you're with the predators, but tomorrow it might be support this surveillance law or you're with the terrorists. Fuck that, fuck this narrative, and fuck a government that's so drunk on power that it thinks that it can blame anyone who disagrees with any of their laws, a paedophile sympathiser, and get away with it.
Well, 1/3 of the Eastern Germans were government informers. 1/3. So that means if you had a family of 6 people, 2 of them were informing to the government. Well, it meant they listened to everything you said, and then if you ever said anything that would be displeasing to everyone else who was lying 100% of the time, which would really mean anything that was ever true, even remotely, then you could be reported for that, and that wouldn't go very well for you, let's say. But also, if you were the person who did the reporting, well, then you'd get a reward. You know, it was very common in the Soviet Union.
Right, you're going to want to listen to this. The British government is now creating an elite police unit to monitor your social media posts for so-called anti-migrant rhetoric. Yep, you heard that right. We're now living in a country where opinions are being policed. Not actions, not crimes, not violence, words. They're setting up offices in Westminster at the National Police Coordination Centre just to scroll through social media, looking for signs of unrest or misinformation about immigration. Not to tackle the actual crimes happening across the country, but to monitor us. You speak out against migrant hotels in your town, you question why hundreds of military-aged men with no documents are being bussed into your community, boom, you're flagged. And this is being sold to us as keeping the peace. No. This is authoritarianism. This is totalitarianism. When free speech becomes a threat to the state, you don't have a free state anymore. This is how regimes tighten their grip, by watching everything you say and pretending it's for your safety. Britain is sleepwalking into a surveillance state, and most people are too afraid or too distracted to even notice. But not me, and hopefully not you. Drop a comment, speak up while we still can.
Normal people like me, put tweets on, go on X or wherever we go on, put on a comment, and you're going to have a whole unit looking at what people are writing. By the way. For God's sake, police officers should be out there arresting criminals. End of. For God's sake, Keir Starmer, get a grip of what's going on and start listening. Start listening to the people that put you in your position.
So the new Online Safety Act, well, it's gone down like a lead balloon, hasn't it? And just to reiterate what Susan Hall said then, police officers should be on our streets fighting criminals. But Yvette Cooper has magically got this money tree in the back garden and plucked it off and built a whole new unit to monitor what you're saying on social media. So basically, you either like what's going on or you lump it and you end up in a cell. What I've seen in this past week is absolutely frightening. You had Keir Starmer in the Oval Office saying England have free speech, they can do what they want, they can say what they want, obviously to a degree. And the proof's now in the pudding. It's absolutely garbage what he was saying. Also, basically, it's just another U-turn on what he said. That's it. Yeah, because we're used to them U-turns, aren't we? How on earth, in this country in 2025, are you not allowed to be concerned about what is going on in Europe, in the world, and express your opinion? to a degree, once again. If these people like go way over the top and start spouting stuff that they shouldn't be, that's complete.
Now we're sleepwalking into the same trap, just with shinier technology and better PR. Wake up, Britain. The wall never really came down. They just moved it online. Right.
300k. You know, yeah, it's funny because the other day, yeah, I must have seen it was on 100k. 150, 200, 250, now 300k. Man, them are hungry. Man, them are starving. And what's really funny is that people think that, oh, if you submit your ID, then they're just gonna have, you know, your details, your information, you know, something about you online that they know. Brother, they already have that shit from when you've had to use your passport information or when you've had to use your ID. I mean, at this point, you know that they're watching us from our phones. They literally have your face, everything about you on a database already.
Berlin Wall fell back in 1989 and Germany basically threw a party. But 30 years later, East Germany still lags behind, and there's a really interesting reason why. And when the East and the West reunited, it was supposed to be one country, one flag, as well as one anthem. But many East Germans still feel like second-class citizens. In fact, their incomes are lower, their politics are more extreme, and their cities are also less developed. Much of this simply has to do with the fact that millions of East Germans simply moved to the West after the unification. Many of their companies couldn't compete, their products too expensive, and their factories now obsolete. And at one point, the East suffered an unemployment of 20%, and their production was also cut in half, but the West was booming. And you have to remember that in East Germany, the government decided your school, your job, and even your healthcare. Now you suddenly had to compete for jobs, choose schools, and even insurances. And even today, East Germans' per capita GDP is 75% of that of the West. Western cities dominate politics as well as business, and according to a recent survey, 57% of East Germans feel like they were left behind.
Right, so this Online Safety Act, let's talk about it. So they've got people having to upload ID if you want to watch adult wrestling. Do you know what I mean? A little bit of power bombing each other, if you get my drift, right? Because apparently it's gonna help children, because apparently children don't know how to use technology. Come off it, bruv. I used to have a MySpace profile, bruv. I was learning how to code in order to customize my profile, bruv. What are you on about, bruv? If anybody was on MySpace, you would know, like, Jeremy had worked out how to code and he had the best MySpace profile ever. But that's how inventive kids get. Kids find something, and like teenagers, they find something. Yes, I'm an unk, by the way. They find something, and they find a way, to get around it, right? The only people really missing out on this are going to be the old people, right? There's going to be people in their 50s. There's a man in his 50s right now. He's logged onto the hub. He doesn't know why he now needs to put his provisional in, or his driving license in, or his passport in. It's asking him to verify his face. He's properly brought it up like that, going, what's all this then? What's all this then? But here's where it's getting mad. Just put that to the side. Like, call them degenerates or whatever you want if watching that material. Call them whatever. Then they started using this Online Safety Act to, like, put images of protests and stuff behind this Online Safety Act thing. So you needed age verification in order to watch footage of protests, which is leading to censorship. And now there's reports of some people needing age verification for Spotify. At what point do we say, hello, this is government overreach? Like, this is too much. Like, and why I say that is because none of this ID is being held on a government database, right? We're seeing leaks left, right, and center. This has all been done by a third-party app, these verifications, in another country. We don't know what's going on over there. Our government doesn't really have any jurisdiction over those companies either, really. Say they sell the company, what happens to your data then? There's like millions of IDs then that a company in a foreign land has access to, and we've just put it out there willy-nilly, excuse the pun, because someone wanted to have a little tug in their van and listen to George Michael's greatest hits. It's getting mental, bruv.
So, a few people have asked what I think of the Online Safety Act in the UK right now. So here's my thoughts. Personally, I don't have an issue with it. I think on the face of it, it's a very good idea. Obviously, you have to verify your age to get on adult sites. Perfect, really good. I'm fully behind that. Does it make a difference to what I do? No, not really. There's probably less traffic on the orange and black page than there probably usually would be. But I've got one word for you, VPN. VPN is your friend. Thank me later. But no, on the face of it, I think it's a great idea. But what I don't like is these age verification sites that they push you towards to verify your age. You have to accept the terms and conditions. Now, how many people are reading those terms and conditions? Probably not a lot of you. I wouldn't. So what could be in them terms and conditions? So lots of things, like they have permission to share your data. They have permission to share your personal details, maybe. I don't know. It could all be in there. Personally, I think it's a massive data grab dressed up as online safety in the safety of children. But yeah, I think there's a deeper reason why people want it appealed, and it's not to do with them not being able to get on the hub. I think the deeper reason is it's a data grab, and that's my personal thoughts. So if you still want to get on these sites, I suggest you download a VPN.
The Online Safety Act is pushing the whole of the UK, look, that news company's reporting on it, to use a VPN. But listen, guys, I'm going to talk to you right now about what a VPN does. So if you don't know what's happening inside the UK right now, there's a restriction on our privacy, essentially. We're not allowed to do anything. You can't even have a tummy tank without uploading a photo ID and face ID recognition system to a company that's not even related to that website or the government. It's a private company. So everyone in the UK is getting a VPN. Why? Because it will encrypt your connection, first of all, so nobody will be able to trace back your activity. It's great for streaming on the Fire Stick. You can download it to unblock content in America. Loads of benefits to using a VPN. But in the UK, it's to bypass all these restrictions and get access to websites that are now being restricted. So with so many VPNs out there, I'm going to tell you, do not use a free VPN. They log, they are bombarded with ads, and they will sell your data. Just do not use them. Everything you do whilst connected to that free VPN will be logged. Use a premium paid VPN. As you can see, everyone is searching for one. I've used them for over 10 years. I've reviewed NordExpress, I've reviewed all of them. The best one is IPVanish, and it's 84% off right now. It's a cracking deal. Unlimited devices. You can put it on as many devices as you want. Your Fire Stick, tablet, laptop, PC. It doesn't matter, and there's no bandwidth. It's unlimited, so you can use it for as much and as long as you want as well. I've used loads. If you're looking for a VPN in the UK right now, get IPVanish, get 84% off, head on over to my profile, click the link, and use that offer code. I just can't believe what the UK has come to. It's an absolute joke, but it's time people started acting. Get a VPN, bypass restrictions, and stay anonymous when you're online.
Why does the Labour Party keep shooting itself in the foot? Now, Peter Carr, the Labour minister, has accused Nigel Farage of being on the side of predators like Jimmy Savile because of his opposition to the Online Safety Act. You have to admit that's pretty below the belt. Does that mean that everybody who has concerns about this act is on the side of people like Jimmy Savile? In my view, that was a really cheap shot, and it was designed to shut down those who have valid concerns about this act. The concerns, of course, are that this act will simply be used to shut down people's freedom of speech. And at the whim of any minister, they could choose what people can and can't see or say online. It has sparked fears of some kind of ghastly Orwellian society that we're walking into, or that we're somehow turning into some kind of Chinese surveillance-style state. This goes against the fundamental values of Britain itself, an island that values freedom and champions freedom of expression and speech. Of course, it's really important to ensure that children and vulnerable people and adults are protected from dangerous and illegal activity online. and that extremists and people who are full of hate are also dealt with effectively. But is this the way to do it? What do you think?
So this is another video about the ongoing attack on freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom of communication. So the Online Safety Act came into force on Friday, and I did a video about it yesterday, and I put another video on literally just 10 minutes ago about the new online policing units that's been set up. But let's look at the Online Safety Act. I had a bit of a set to, reasonably friendly actually, yesterday with a guy on X who said, so are you saying that you don't think that it's a good idea to protect children from harmful content and from pornography? I've never said that. And absolutely I think it's a good idea to put in place measures that stop children from accessing harmful content and pornography. But this act is much, much bigger than that. That's what it's being dressed up as. That's what they're selling it as. That's what we're telling everyone that it's all about. It goes much further than that. It's 290 pages long, this act. It requires any form of platform, social media platforms, forums, websites, that has any form of communication, any form of forum, anything that could potentially contain adult material. It doesn't even have to be adult material like a pornography site. So, for example, messaging groups like WhatsApps and Signal. If you are a man of my age like me and you're in WhatsApp groups with a load of other dads or your mates from school, we send each other horrible jokes all the time. We send each other banter all the time. We say things on those groups that we probably wouldn't want to be seen in public. We take the piss out of each other. In theory, this bill is asking all of those messaging groups and messaging apps to hand over all of that material or to police it for anything that they feel might be controversial or might contravene the act, and to report that. Now, at the moment, they're refusing to do that, but it's going to go through court cases. So all of your private messaging is subject to this app. Not only that, but websites, anything to do with gambling, anything to do with adult comedy, for example, potentially, jokes, anything to do with information that could get published that could be deemed adult in content. So, for example, a lot of the material on Wikipedia, which in theory is a factual website, falls within the scope of this act now. So much so that Wikipedia are going to try and take legal action to prevent themselves being caught up in this act. So literally anything that's out there in the public domain can now fall within the auspices of this act. And the companies that run the websites, the social media companies, pretty much any online business whatsoever can be fined and or closed down, and all of the people that interact with that potentially can fall foul of the law if they submit any material, discuss any material, or swap any material that is potentially deemed inappropriate or adult or contravenes the act. On top of that, they require in-depth age verification and identity verification. So facial scanning, proof of passports, etc., etc. We know how much hacking goes on. We know how much database theft goes on. Isn't it going to be a criminal's delight when every single website out there, particularly maybe embarrassing websites like pornography websites, that may just be showing perfectly legal adult material that isn't weird or dodgy or strange in any way, and suddenly you've got a database of all of the users of that website, and you've got their passports and their facial ID and their driving license. Isn't that prime territory for blackmail and prime territory for crime? Because those databases are going to go missing. 100% they are. This opens up a massive can of worms. And so, to answer the guy that I did chat on X with yesterday, I'm 100% in favour of protecting children, protecting underage children, stopping children from having access to material that it really isn't good for them to have access to. Absolutely on side with that. But I'm not in favour of WhatsApp messaging groups between consenting groups of blokes or adults exchanging messages being viewed and subject to this act. I'm not in favour of websites like Wikipedia falling foul of this act. I'm not in favour of maybe gambling websites or football websites which may have adult material on it falling foul of this act. It goes way too far, and it gives the government powers over all of our online activities that they just shouldn't have. The whole point of the internet is that it's freedom of information, freedom of activity, exchange of ideas, exchange of viewpoints, and outside of the control of the big boys. But what the governments are trying to do, particularly in this country, is bring all of that back within their control and to effectively bully all of the providers, all of the content companies, all of the social media companies into grassing us up. It turns us into a massive nation of grassed up people. And that's why I'm against it. And that's why I'm against the overreach contained within it. It could have been phrased, it could have been done, and it could have been targeted specifically just at stopping children getting access to materials they shouldn't have. But it's been spread, the net has been spread much, much, much more widely than that. And it's intended to catch all of us in that net.
Lots to get through, including the Online Safety Act, which you have highlighted two key parts amongst the litany of outrage, but two key particular parts of this which have caused you big concern. Just explain what they are.
Yeah, well, I want to make sure everyone watching this programme understands that this Online Safety Act, Orwellianly named, is plunging this country into a China-style surveillance state. And so the two key things I want to flag inside the Act. Section 44, which allows the Secretary of State to unilaterally force Ofcom to change the rules about what needs to be censored and what doesn't, without an act of parliament, without a vote. So basically, it's a death knell of democracy in that respect. The second one is Section 179, which is even more insidious. What it does is make it illegal to say something that is false, that causes, and I quote, non-trivial psychological harm. And it's not just making that illegal, it is forcing social media companies to proactively censor that speech. And the penalties that are being imposed on these social media companies are things like 10% of global revenues and potentially criminal sanction for management. So what's that going to do, Ben? It's going to create an incentive structure for social media companies to over-censor, because that's the rational thing to do if you're trying to protect shareholder value. And we've already seen in the less than 48, I think 36 hours since this thing has come into force, we've seen protests of against migrant hotels in Leeds being actively censored on X, by the way. And X is, thanks to Elon, supposed to be the last bastion of free speech. And we're seeing tweets which criticise immigration being censored. And now the Telegraph reported last night the Prime Minister has brought about a quote, and I quote, an elite police force not to protect British people from illegal migrants and the crime they're committing, but to monitor anti-migrant activity. We are slipping into a world which would frankly make Xi Jinping blush.
Two really shocking points there. The sort of censoring of the migrant protests on X, for example, do you think that fell under the second point you mentioned there, which is non-physical psychological harm?
Non-trivial psychological harm. So yeah, exactly. So this is a totally different threshold to incitement to violence, which is one thing. Now the threshold is literally hurting someone's feelings, right? But here's the point, Ben. What's happening now? No, so what that comes under in terms of the Act is, quote, harmful content. And I quote, in some cases, it actually talks about legal but harmful. And just before the camera started rolling, we were having a conversation. You said, who determines that? And I'll tell you who will determine that. The very last people, the people watching this programme, would want determining it. And I want to remind the viewers, as much as Keir Starmer is an abomination and we despise this Labour government, it was the Tories who created this whole situation. It was the Tories who voted it through pretty much unanimously, including the likes of Jenrick, including the likes of Braverman, the ones who now present themselves as anti all of this stuff. They voted all of this stuff through. And I want to emphasise, if we don't do something about this quickly, it is going to be normalised.
I better log off this YouTube before I end up in some secret police Stasi-style database if I haven't been added already. See you in the next video.